In today's Federal Flash, we pay tribute to the life of George Floyd and countless others whose killings show how much more must be done to address systemic racism in our country. We'll also share new recommendations for prioritizing equity in the response to COVID-19, as well as several items from the U.S. Department of Education. Hi, I'm Philip Lovell, and I'm joined by Lindsay Dworkin. We at the Alliance for Excellent Education are outraged by the horrific killings of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and countless others. So much more must be done to end the ongoing fatal police shootings and other violence against Black people across the country. In a statement, Deb Delisle, President and CEO of All for Ed, said, quote, "Candid, constructive conversations are long overdue. It is time for action. We at the Alliance for Excellent Education stand with those calling for justice and change in this country. Our voices must be heard. We know students of color are disproportionately impacted by violence and trauma, with a direct impact on students' learning and well-being, both in and out of school. I hope this unrest brings renewed attention to the differences between life's realities for white people and people of color, along with the courage to create lasting change." All for Ed joined organizations nationwide to bring attention to the trauma this violence causes young people, and over 400 civil rights organizations, and calling for congressional action to end police violence. More information on these recommendations, led by the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, is available at the link below.
All for Ed and 13 other education and civil rights organizations issued recommendations to states and districts for prioritizing equity in the ongoing response to COVID-19. The report, Coronavirus in the Classroom, covers 6 topics: ensuring equity in fiscal policies, meeting students' basic needs, expanding and improving remote learning, easing the high school to college transition, extending learning time, and determining students' academic, social, and emotional needs. In a statement, Janet Murguia, President and CEO of Unidos US, said, quote, "The COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted the lives of students and families across the country, but it is among our most vulnerable students, including our nation's 5 million English learners and low-income students, where the educational impact and barriers to learning have been far more acute. It is critical, then, that states and districts take steps that safeguard the academic success of all students during this time. These recommendations are a good foundation for states to build on and put students on a path to success in the upcoming school year." Viewers can read and share the joint recommendations at the link below.
Tensions are also running high in response to Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos's interpretation of the CARES Act as it relates to private schools. Secretary DeVos is calling on states to send millions of dollars from the CARES Act to private schools based on what many believe to be a flawed reading of the law. As we described in a previous episode of the Federal Flash, DeVos issued guidance to states regarding a policy called equitable services. Under Title I of the Every Student Succeeds Act, children who are at risk academically and who live in Title I school attendance areas, but enroll in private schools instead, are entitled to receive equitable services from the local public school district, such as tutoring and expanding learning time programs. Districts must set aside some of their Title I allocation to fund these services for eligible students who attend non-public schools. To be clear, the amount of funds districts set aside under Title I to provide equitable services is based on the narrow segment of students who are eligible, those who are academically at risk and who live in Title I school attendance areas. The CARES Act says that equitable services should be provided in the same manner as under Title I of ESSA. However, Secretary DeVos has decided to interpret the CARES Act differently. She believes that because CARES Act funds can be used for an array of purposes beyond Title I and are intended to serve all public school students, not just those who are low income, districts must provide equitable services to all students who attend private schools, regardless of whether they are at risk academically or live in low income areas.
Needless to say, many people disagree with Secretary DeVos, including the NEA and AFT, the national organizations representing chief state school officers, school superintendents, principals, school board members, and All for Ed. Perhaps more importantly, at least 8 states have said they will not be following the department's interpretation of the law. For now, States are not technically required to do so because the department has only issued guidance, which does not carry the weight of law. However, Secretary DeVos has said she plans to issue a regulation, which could change things substantially because regulations are binding and would force states to follow her interpretation. In addition, the department has indicated it will issue an interim final rule, meaning that this regulation will take effect immediately, as opposed to the typical process where there is a period for public comment on a proposed rule. That said, if Congress passes new COVID-19 legislation, we hope they will clarify this policy. The HEROES Act passed by the House does just that, and the Republican chairman of the Senate Education Committee, Lamar Alexander of Tennessee, has said he would like to clarify this in legislation as well. We'll keep you posted.
Before we leave you today, we have just a few other items. First, the department has approved plans to implement the Perkins Career Technical Education Act for 15 states. The department also issued new guidance on services for English learners during the COVID-19 pandemic. Finally, the department has received all of the applications from governors for the $3 billion provided by the CARE Act to help governors support education in response to the pandemic. Those applications will be made public soon.
That's all for today. For an alert when the next Federal Flash is available, email alliance@allfored.org. Stay home, stay safe. Thanks for watching.
Federal Flash is the Alliance for Excellent Education's video series on important developments in education policy in Washington, D.C. Watch online at allfored.org/Federal Flash, subscribe to our YouTube channel, or listen to Federal Flash wherever you get your podcasts.